until midnight. If I'm not there by then, he'll be killed. That's the same hour that the Brooklyn Navy Yard will be bombed and the Norden bomb site destroyed. You may be fast, Wonder Woman, but nobody can be in two places at the same time.
She appeared in films alongside Jerry Lewis and Elvis. Despite having a luxurious home in Beverly Hills, Stella Stevens passed away penniless. Why? She was duped by Playboy, who used her pictures for 15 years without paying. She was forced to play parts she detested by Hollywood executives. She was unable to pay for care when she developed Alzheimer's. Her 50-year-old home had to be sold for pennies. Hollywood neglected to honor her at the Oscars, even after her death. Her son is now coming clean about how Hollywood and Playboy took everything away from her. On October 1, 1938, Stella Stevens was born in Yazoo City, Mississippi, as Estelle Caro Eggleston. She was the only child of Estelle Dovey Caro Eggleston, a nurse, and Thomas Elliott Eggleston, an insurance salesman. Her family relocated to Memphis, Tennessee, when she was 4 years old. She left the small-town life of Yazoo City behind and entered a larger, faster-paced metropolis. She went to St. Anne's Catholic School before transferring to Sacred Heart School, and she lived on Carrington Road close to Highland Street. She completed Memphis Technical High School's Memphis Evening School by 1955. There was an unexpected link to the past in her family history. Henry Clay Tyler, a Boston jeweler and one of her great-grandfathers, had put the clock in the cupola of the Yazoo City Courthouse. Her roots felt a little more distinct because of a minor historical mark rather than a family legacy of wealth or celebrity. When she first saw La Strada, her dream of becoming an actress began. She had never witnessed a performance like Julieta Masina's. Without saying a word, she shifted between heartbreak and laughter. Stella found that type of storytelling fascinating, and she knew right away what she wanted to do. Life, however, had other ideas first. At the age of 16, she wed electrician Noble Herman Stevens on December 3, 1954. Andrew Stevens, their only child, was born on June 10, 1955, less than a year later. The union ended in divorce. It ended in 1957. A torturous custody dispute ensued. They both claimed that the other had abducted their son, transforming the separation into something much harder. Although Stella ultimately gained full custody, the argument left her exhausted both financially and emotionally. At the age of 19, she was raising a child alone after getting divorced. Her ambition to become an actress was no longer merely a pipe dream. She was prepared to pursue her escape route. While attending Memphis State University, Stella Stevens began her path to Hollywood. After a divorce, she was raising her young son while juggling her studies at the age of 19. When she appeared in a school production of Bus Stop, everything changed. The local media paid attention to her portrayal of Sherry, a budding nightclub singer. Her talent was recognized by the Memphis Press Scimitar, which encouraged her to pursue a career in acting. She contracted with 20th Century Fox in 1959. It was sufficient to get her started, even though it lasted only 6 months. She debuted in Hollywood that same year in the musical comedy Say One For Me, which starred Debbie Reynolds and Bing Crosby. Despite playing a minor part as a chorus girl, she was unique. She received a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer after the industry took notice. Angie Dickinson and Tuesday Weld share the honor. Stevens signed with Paramount Pictures as a result of that momentum. Her portrayal of Appassionata von Climax in Lil Abner later in 1959 showcased her ability to blend humor and glitz. She was adored by audiences. She was now viewed as a rising star by Hollywood, but it also began to mold her image in ways she was unable to completely control. At the age of 21, she pretended to be Playboy's Playmate of the Month in January 1960. Making the choice wasn't simple. She needed the money because she was a struggling single mother. She subsequently disclosed that she was only paid half up front, despite Playboy's $5,000 offer being a substantial sum at the time. Strings were attached to the rest. She was to serve as a hostess at Playboy parties, per Hugh Hefner's wishes. There were issues with the magazine as a result of her refusal. Her fame was increased by the pictures, but they also resulted in typecasting. She was first viewed by the studios as a sex symbol and then as an actress. Stevens persisted in his progress in spite of the obstacles. She played nightclub singer Robin Gantner opposite Elvis Presley in the 1962 film Girls. The movie did well at the box office. and there was no denying her chemistry with Presley. However, Stevens wasn't content behind the scenes. This wasn't the kind of movie she had hoped for, and she preferred more serious roles. Nevertheless, it solidified her place among the most well-known actresses in Hollywood. She put a lot of effort into demonstrating her range despite Hollywood's attempts to confine her. She started playing more dramatic parts, such as in John Cassavetes' 1961 film, Too Late Blues. She repeatedly demonstrated her ability to do more than just play love interests. Despite Hollywood's attempts to define her, Stevens was adamant about writing her own narrative. When she starred in The Nutty Professor in 1963, she made her breakthrough. She brought warmth and charm to the film's comedic chaos as Stella Purdy, Jerry Lewis's character's intelligent and self-assured love interest. Lewis played the clumsy Professor Julius Kelp, who changes into the haughty and slick-talking Buddy Love in this contemporary adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Lewis's wild energy was counterbalanced by Stevens' performance, which gave her character a grounded and authentic feel. And reviewers commended her for holding her own in a comedy film that featured one of the biggest stars. The movie was a huge hit. It became a classic, not just a fad at the time. Acknowledged as a significant component of American cinema, it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2004. Things weren't as seamless off-screen. There have been rumors of an affair between Stevens and Lewis during filming, indicating that their relationship was complicated. Their on-screen chemistry was evident whether it was real or not. Eddie Murphy's 1996 remake was influenced by the movie for decades. However, Stevens' original performance was still the best. Stevens demonstrated that she wasn't just a comedian after The Nutty Professor. She co-starred with Dean Martin in the James Bond parody The Silencers in 1966. Her portrayal of Gail Hendricks allowed her to showcase her playful side while fusing humor and glitz. Then, in 1972, she adopted a totally new persona. One of the most popular disaster films of the time was The Poseidon Adventure, which tells the tale of a luxury cruise ship that capsizes and its passengers must struggle to survive. Stevens portrayed the tough-talking character Ernest Borgnine's wife, Linda Rogo, a former prostitute. She gave her character strength and depth in a high-stakes, suspenseful movie, making Linda one of the most memorable characters. The movie received numerous Academy Award nominations and was a huge box office success. She was a well-known figure on television by the 1970s and 1980s. She played the lead role of Lutmay Sanders in the 1981 to 1982 primetime soap opera Flamingo Road. Throughout 34 episodes, she portrayed a shrewd pub owner with a troubled past, giving the character depth and becoming one of the show's most memorable characters. She wrote that she appeared as a guest on some of the most popular television shows at the time, such as Murder, The Love Boat, and Bonanza. She portrayed a variety of characters in several episodes of The Love Boat, each of which allowed her to display a different aspect of her skill set. She continued to work as the years passed. She demonstrated her ability to remain relevant in a field that is constantly evolving by appearing in General Hospital, Magnum P.I. Highlander, and the television series. She had other passions besides acting, though. She went behind the camera at a time when there weren't many female directors in Hollywood. She directed the independent film The Ranch, 1989, which focused on themes of survival and resiliency and told the story of women working at a ranch in Nevada. Although the film was not widely released, it demonstrated her commitment to telling stories that had meaning. She had contributed to the 1979 documentary The American Heroine, which examined the place of women in American history, 10 years prior. Projects that featured strong women, both in front of and behind the camera, always drew her in. In addition, she co-wrote screenplays and worked on ambitious projects like the Western-themed trilogy Hard Ride. Stevens didn't let the fact that Hollywood wasn't always accepting of female filmmakers deter her. Stella Stevens took on a daring theatrical challenge in the 1980s. In a touring production of an all-female adaptation of The Odd Couple, she played the role of Oscar Madison. The overly tidy and nervous flatmate, Florence Unger, was portrayed by Sandy Dennis. This new adaptation of Neil Simon's beloved comedy gave the story a new angle by recasting the well-known mismatched pair as women. In contrast to her work in television and movies, it was an opportunity to showcase her comedic abilities. Oscar was the exact opposite of Florence. He was messy, reckless, and rough around the edges. She was able to fully embrace fast-paced dialogue and physical comedy in front of an audience while playing this role. Stevens made the role her own, and the production was notable for its creative take on a beloved play. She had taken her first steps behind the camera 10 years prior. The American Heroine, a documentary about women's evolving roles in society, marked her directorial debut in 1979. The movie examined their challenges and successes in various domains, demonstrating how standards were changing. It was not merely directed by Stevens. She demonstrated that she was capable of more than just acting by producing and directing the project herself. Although it wasn't a huge hit, the documentary marked a sea change in her life. She had been playing other people's characters for years, but now she was in charge of the narrative. Her decision to concentrate on women's lives demonstrated her strong interest in issues of equality and empowerment. The Ranch, a feature film that combined comedy with themes of resiliency and reinvention, marked her return to directing in 1989. In the story, Gary Fieldgard's character, a cowboy, assisted a struggling executive in converting a dilapidated ranch into a rustic health spa. The project was personal to Stevens because her son, Andrew Stevens, played that executive. The film's tone was lighthearted, striking a balance between genuine warmth and humor. Although it wasn't a big hit, it demonstrated her talent for making a moving tale come to life. It was more than just another directing job because she was working with her son. She tried something entirely different in 1999. She and William Hegner co-wrote the book Razzle Dazzle. The book chronicled the ascent and decline of rock and roll musician Johnny Galt, whose charisma and stage presence electrified audiences. Johnny, who was born in Memphis, had all the charisma and swagger of a legendary figure in music, but there were risks associated with being famous. The resemblance to Elvis Presley was too obvious for readers to ignore. But the book was about more than one man. It looked at the demands of being a celebrity, how the entertainment business can both elevate and depress people, and the conflict between happiness and success. This was an additional phase in Stevens' creative process. She had spent years in Hollywood and had witnessed the glitz and the challenges of celebrity. She was able to tell a story that felt personal when she wrote Razzle Dazzle. Although Stella Stevens led a glamorous life in Hollywood, her journey was shaped by personal struggles, family estrangement, and heartbreak. She was raised in a traditional household where aspirations of becoming famous were not tolerated. When she posed for Playboy as Playmate of the Month in 1960, it was her big break. Although the publicity aided in the beginning of her acting career, it also had negative effects. Her decision was viewed by her family, who are still firmly anchored in Memphis, Tennessee, as a betrayal of their principles. Her mother reportedly hoped she would fail in Hollywood and come home, and local newspapers called it a mistake. Stella persisted, securing parts in big-budget films such as The Poseidon Adventure, 1972, and The Nutty Professor, 1963. However, the harm to her family relationships was irreversible. She never fully repaired the relationship and was essentially disowned. Stella's romantic life was equally complicated. Although she had several relationships over the years, her most enduring one was with rock guitarist Bob Kulick. Her first marriage ended in divorce. They remained together for almost 40 years after meeting in 1983. Before Stella's health began to deteriorate, they spent years living in Beverly Hills. Everything changed in 2015 after she received an Alzheimer's diagnosis. Watching the woman he loved lose her independence was painful for Kulick. As her health deteriorated in 2016, she entered an assisted living facility. Although Kulick saw her frequently, friends were aware of his emotional difficulties. The custody dispute over her son, Andrew Stevens, was one of the most difficult situations in her life. The fight, which happened in Tennessee, soon became a financial and psychological burden. Her opponents took advantage of the court's disapproval of Hollywood lifestyles at the time. Her 1960 Playboy photoshoot strengthened their argument that the entertainment industry was not a suitable place to raise a child. Conservative critics viewed her decision to pose as evidence that she was unsuited to be a mother, even though she stood by it. Her income was depleted by attorney fees as the legal battle continued. In order to continue fighting for her son, she was forced to sacrifice her career. The Playboy deal did not help as much as she had hoped, and money was already a problem. Stella Stevens was named Playboy's Playmate of the Month in January 1960. She was a young actress raising a child by herself while attempting to establish herself. Due to financial difficulties, she viewed an offer from a photographer and his spouse as a means of surviving. They offered her a photo shoot with Playboy or $5,000. She reprised her role in Lil Abner in the feature, Dog Patch Playmate. Although it appeared to be a simple job, things didn't go as planned. Hugh Hefner informed her that she would only get half of the money after the shoot. She was forced to work as a hostess at one of his clubs in order to obtain the remainder. She declined. She was upset about the encounter, but she still had a relationship with Playboy. In 1965 and 1968, she was featured in the magazine once more. She became recognizable as a result of the exposure, but it also gave her an uncontrollable image. She was among the most photographed women in the world by the middle of the 1960s. She came in at number 27 on Playboy's list of the 20th century's 100 sexiest stars. She benefited somewhat from the attention. It exposed millions of people to her name. If even half of those people remembered her, they might purchase tickets to her films, she once told the New York Times. However, there was a drawback. She was now viewed as a sexpot in Hollywood. She was hesitant to be cast in serious roles by directors. The industry had already made up its mind, but she still wanted to establish herself as an actress. She was at her most frustrated by 1974. She filed a $7 million lawsuit against Playboy Enterprises and Hugh Hefner. Over the course of 15 years, the magazine was accused in the lawsuit of violating her privacy by using her nude photos without her permission. She said that these pictures hurt her career by making her seem like a one-dimensional character and costing her roles. She was particularly incensed about a photograph that appeared in Playboy's November 1973 issue. It featured her sitting on a couch with her tongue protruding and her eyes crossed. "It was humiliating," she said. After 2 years of dragging on, the case was dismissed on June 14, 1976. She filed too late, the judge decided. 2 weeks had already elapsed since the deadline. She remained resentful even after the lawsuit ended. She continued to discuss the harm Playboy had done to her career years later. An image that was never entirely her own made her feel imprisoned. She was still included in the magazine's history, though. She was once again listed as one of the century's sexiest women in 1998. She didn't get the kind of recognition she had hoped for. In retrospect, she captured the essence of the event in a single sentence. People are unaware of the terrible things men can do to a stunning woman who is naked. However, Stella faced other challenges as well. Hollywood studios dominated almost every facet of an actor's career in the 1960s. Stevens Inc. deals with two of the largest studios of the time, Paramount and Columbia Pictures. She was forced to accept roles that she did not always want because of these contracts. When she was cast in Girls by Paramount, she made an attempt to decline in 1962. She didn't want to star with Elvis Presley and felt the script was weak. She was given a deadline by the studio: complete the movie or face suspension. Only after they assured her of a future role with Montgomery Clift did she grudgingly agree. That pledge was never fulfilled. Even though Stevens was one of the most photographed women of the 1960s, she had trouble converting her notoriety into a steady income. It was challenging for her to establish herself as a serious actress because Columbia Pictures frequently cast her in glitzy or sensual roles. She was capable of more, but the system prioritized financial gain over artistic development. It was almost impossible for her to break free from the cycle that had trapped her career. Her own decisions caused some of the most significant setbacks in her career. Refusing to play Hot Lips Houlihan on MASH was one of the most agonizing. Beginning in 1972 and continuing until 1983, the series was one of the most popular television programs ever. Instead, Loretta Swit was cast in the role, and she made it into one of the most adored characters in television history. Stevens had opted to concentrate on films rather than TV. However, looking back, it was a choice that cost her long-term recognition as well as her financial stability. She later acknowledged that she regretted the lost chance. At a time when her film offers were dwindling, the role could have provided her with a stable income and career. She ended up working on smaller projects instead. That never restored her former level of notoriety. She began searching for strategies to secure her future outside of Hollywood by the 1970s. She opened a bakery and art gallery in Twisp and bought land close to Carlton, Washington. In an effort to escape the demands of the entertainment industry, she also relocated to a 27-acre ranch. Although she might have felt more at ease after the change, the businesses did not turn a profit. When Stella Stevens purchased her Beverly Hills home in 1965, she was at the pinnacle of her career. She decided on a home in the upscale Beverly Crest neighborhood, which mirrored her success and sense of style. Just a few years prior, in 1962, the house had been constructed in the sleek, then popular mid-century modern style. It featured 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and 2,806 square feet of space. There was a fireplace in the living room and a bar in the family room. Custom hand-painted murals and stained glass windows that demonstrated her love of art were among the details that set it apart. A freeform swimming pool outside gave the backyard a sense of seclusion. She spent more than half of her life there. However, by 2016, everything was different. No longer was the house the glitzy place it had been. Both she and it had grown old. The cost of medical care was increasing, and financial difficulties were becoming inevitable. She needed money to pay for long-term care because she had been fighting Alzheimer's disease. After being listed as a fixer-upper, the house sold for $1.25 million as is. Even though it was in Beverly Hills, the cost was commensurate with its state. Before she moved into an assisted living facility, she had assistance from Bob Kulick, her longtime partner, in managing the sale. It was a difficult but essential choice after over 50 years in the house. She had looked for a different kind of life long before she was compelled to sell her house in Beverly Hills. She purchased a 27-acre ranch in the Methow Valley, close to Carlton, Washington, in 1976. It served as an escape from Hollywood and a means of escaping the demands of celebrity life. She invested money and time into personalizing it. She renovated another old house on the property, restored a historic 1901 homestead cabin, and even opened a small bakery and art gallery in the neighboring town of Twist. It seemed like the ideal location for a while. She cherished the independence, the room, and the simplicity. However, it was costly to maintain the ranch, and by 1983, it was evident that the expenses were excessive. It was impossible to realize the dream of a permanent mountain retreat. The $265,000 she received for selling the ranch was much less than the total amount she had invested over the years. She had no choice, but it was a painful loss. She was forced to abandon the life she had attempted to create due to financial strain. Decades later, she sold her house in Beverly Hills to pay for medical bills rather than to start a new adventure. The expense of Alzheimer's care had skyrocketed by the 2010s. She was able to secure a spot in a Los Angeles assisted living facility with the $1.25 million from the sale. For someone who had previously led a successful and glamorous life, it was a harsh reality. She spent a large portion of her later years with her longtime partner, renowned rock guitarist Bob Kulick. She carried the emptiness he left behind when he died in 2020. Andrew Stevens continued to play a significant role in her life despite their relationship's ups and downs. Her last years were difficult. As Alzheimer's progressed, the cost of medical care increased. The industry that praised her in the past has mostly moved on. Nevertheless, she continued to be a representation of tenacity, a woman who defied the labels placed upon her. Took note when she died on February 17, 2023, at the age of 84. People who had worked with her and those who had admired her from a distance began to pay their respects. However, many were incensed by the controversy surrounding her exclusion from the Oscars memorial segment. It served as a sobering reminder that Hollywood frequently forgets its own. Andrew, however, was determined to keep her legacy alive. He released Stella Stevens in 2024. In the 99-minute documentary The Last Starlet, the truth about his mother's life is explored. It's a closer look at the woman behind the glitzy image than merely a tribute. The film was directed by Andrew, a successful producer with more than 190 films to his credit. On November 13, 2024, it made its debut at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. Restoring the prominence of Stella's story. The harsh realities Stella had to deal with are not downplayed in the movie. It examines her ascent to prominence in a male-dominated field, her struggle for improved roles, and her frequently disregarded support of women's rights. From battling Alzheimer's disease in her later years to being a single mother early in her career, it also highlights the sacrifices she made. Andrew had more than one reason for doing it. Even though Stella had been an active member of the Academy for years, he was incensed when she was not included in the In Memoriam segment of the 2023 Academy Awards. His resolve to ensure that Hollywood remembered her appropriately was strengthened by that encounter. Interviews with her admirers, unique video that provides insights into her personal life, and anecdotes that transcend the glitzy persona she was frequently reduced to are all included in the documentary. The reaction has been overwhelmingly positive, with both critics and viewers acknowledging it as an honest examination of Hollywood's treatment of its female stars as well as a celebration of her accomplishments.